Hi, I'm LadyJenevia. I'm making this video about Netflix's Shadow and Bone. Obviously, there are going to be spoilers about season 1 of the show, and I will also be referencing some things from some of the books, so if you don't want any of those things to be spoiled, feel free to check out some of my other videos on my channel, and maybe come back to this one after you've watched the show or read the books. I'm going to start with the main 6 characters and then branch out from there. Starting with Alina, season 1 ended with her and Mal going off together after winning in the showdown against the Darkling. One of the changes they made from the books is that Alina absorbed the collar made from Morozova's stag. At the time of me recording this, I don't know if anyone is having a fit over that particular alteration, but I need to point out that the mechanics of storytelling in live action are very different from writing in a book more or less whatever you want. You don't have to worry about things like a budget, and you don't have to worry about how many hours it's going to take to put that prosthetic on, and again, when you have to take it off of Jessie when filming. I like that she absorbed the collar from a storytelling level as well, but I also understand that a lot of the reasons to change this detail from the books can very much be just because of how much more difficult it would be to stick Jessie in a collar. I don't know what the prop department made it out of, but it definitely looked sharp. She's the top billed star and she gets a lot of screen time, and I like the fact that she is being spared from the pains of being stuck in that thing for who knows how many months of filming. And that's my opinion on the matter. One of the things I would really love for Alina and Mal to do in season 2 is go to Shu Han. There's a real opportunity here to improve on the questionable writing choice to paint out the Shu in the books as this evil, scary East Asian monolith enemy. Didn't care for that whatsoever, so I would love to see Alina get to learn something about Shu Han by visiting there. I also just want to see what Shu Han will look like as a place in the show. There's a real opportunity for the storytelling to further delve into the struggles of being mixed, where you can potentially be made to feel like an outsider for both of your heritage cultures. If Alina goes there, she could potentially gain some wisdom and perspective from being there, and maybe she'll also learn something that can help her on her journey to destroy the Shadow Fold once and for all. And I would love to see that. Of course, I also want to see us further develop the Alina and Mal romance. The first season completely surpassed any expectations I might have had for them as a pairing. I did not have any sort of investment in any of Alina's potential romantic interests in the entire book trilogy going into watching the show for the first time. It seems like a fair few people regarded the book series as a love triangle. I didn't find either one of them to be particularly appealing love interests in the books, but Mal in the show, 11 out of 10 love interest. Christina Strain, one of the show's writers whom I interviewed a couple of months ago here on my channel, she had said in that interview that Mal would be really sweet and that he would go to the ends of the earth for Alina. And I believe it. The very last thing we saw in season 1 was the Darkling emerging from the fold with his new creatures? Yikes, that doesn't bode well for our heroes, now does it? And I've mentioned this more than once in different videos, but I really didn't like that we didn't see what he was up to in the books. He will be doing nefarious things unbeknownst to the heroes, and we as the viewers of the show, we need to see what he's getting up to. And that would be a great way to build up the dramatic tension for the audience as the season progresses. I don't know what sort of arc they'll follow in a second season, and I don't know at what point in the season they would want to reveal to the heroes that the Darkling is in fact still alive. He did not get torn apart by the Volcra and get taken out of commission permanently. Wouldn't that have been nice? A bit of karmic violence.
Oh, I'm for that. I'm all for that. All right.
One thing I want to ask the audience, because I'm not really sure how I feel about this. If you have read the books, how do you want Baghra's story to be played out in the adaptation? Do you want any adjustments to be made to her material or the way that it's shown on screen? It's one thing for the book to reunite the reader with her after what's happened to her, but presumably the show will still give us scenes with the Darkling forming and executing his plans. So as far as what he does to Baghra, all I know is I would rather not see anything too graphic involving her eyes. It's Shadow and Bone, not Final Destination 5. Don't look that up if you are squeamish about eyes. Switching over to the Crows now, in season 1 we unpacked a good amount of Inej's backstory. I really liked the way that they handled it, and in particular the fact that they did not film any scenes with a child actor playing out any of the things that Inej has been through in her past. A lot of fans of the Six of Crows book duology seemed really upset that not every single detail of what was in those books was going to be addressed in the first season, but I think the writers played the long game very well. Of course, it's a gamble because you don't know for sure if the show will get renewed for another season when you're making a season, but by covering Inej's backstory, you are able to flesh out who she is and what she's been through, and also establish this slow burn between her and Kaz. A lot of what he was doing in season 1 was to try to make sure that this job was successful so that he would be able to pay off her indenture, which is also great since it frees up her autonomy as a character in potential future seasons. And then you will have more runtime to hopefully get into Kaz's trauma. There's a lot to show with that. With Inej's backstory, I really do think it's right to not show that in live action, but I think it might be good if you are able to fit in the runtime to film at least some of Kaz's backstory. I like the idea of seeing Freddy playing Kaz before he was the person that the viewer now sees. That transformation could be a really effective tool to showing just how significant his traumatic experiences were. And if you haven't read the books and don't care about knowing what happened in the books, Kaz had a younger brother who tragically passed away after the two of them were scammed by Pekka Rollins, who was briefly introduced in the first season of the show. In the books, Pekka Rollins used to be a scammer and he would use different aliases, and these schemes were part of how he rose to becoming this really high-ranking criminal boss. They mentioned revenge in the show, specifically how Kaz wants to get revenge, and that was sort of a way of planting seeds of what they could most likely be getting into in future seasons as long as the show gets renewed. As a result of Kaz's traumas, he developed an aversion to physically touching people, specifically touch that involves touching human skin with his own bare skin. That's why he always wears gloves. So very early on in the first season, they do this really beautiful close-up on Kaz's gloved hands, and if I remember correctly, feel free to remind me since it's been a year since I last read those books, but you don't actually learn about Kaz's backstory and his touch aversion right away. He's a criminal mastermind who is always wearing his gloves, but they don't let the reader know what's going on with that right from the jump. So it makes sense that they would do it in the show in such a way that they're building their way up to showing that and teaching the viewers about that part of his character. It's a story that has so much going on that I don't think you can rush it, nor should you rush it. It's quite funny to see how book fans are towards Kaz and Inej's relationship, because this is probably the only ship that I can think of where people would have actually been upset if they had kissed in the first season, but we all have seen now that they didn't do that. Again, I would like to open things up to ask the audience, how fast or slow do you want Kaz and Inej's relationship to be developed on the show? And if you decide to answer this in the comments, specify whether or not you have read the books or if you've only watched the show, and then share whatever thoughts you have about how fast or slow you would like to see them develop. I also want to share something that might be kind of relevant to this question, that there's this thing that is sort of floating around on Film TV Twitter or Film TV social media. It's a rumor that Netflix doesn't like to renew shows past 3 seasons in total. I don't know if it's true or not, it's a rumor, but the rumor is that it has something to do with some sort of technical rule to do with television production, where if a show is going to run for more than 3 seasons, you have to start giving them more money after those 3 seasons. And I don't know if that money goes to the show's budget or the people who work on it. It's just a rumor as far as I'm aware at the time of me recording this, but if there is any truth to that rumor, and as a result, the most likely hope for Shadow and Bone is that it would only get to run for 3 seasons, how would that factor potentially influence how you would want the pacing of their relationship to play out in the television series. Let me know in the comments because I'm very curious to know what people think about that. Now let's talk about Jesper, whom I absolutely adore. I would love to start digging into things in his backstory as well if there's time. Maybe we could see the development of his gambling addiction or see his parents. One of the things that I thought was cool that the show did was they put in a very subtle hint in the first season that Jesper is a Grisha. I don't know if people who haven't read the books would have picked up on that. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But I would imagine that the people watching the show who have read the books would have clocked that immediately. In a general sense, I would love to see the budget increased for the show as well as the episode count if that's possible, particularly because I would imagine they're going to be expanding the focus onto more characters, or I think they should anyway. It seems a waste of those perfectly great characters to not do that. As the book is called Six of Crows, there are 3 more characters besides the main trio to follow on that side of the story. The end of season 1 nicely set up Nina meeting and seemingly teaming up with the trio since she overheard them being in need of a heart render, which sure is convenient since those happen to be the exact powers that she has. Even on the Shadow and Bone side of the story, I think there are so many characters that are worth following and giving more airtime. I loved Soya's arc and how she was perfectly set up at the end of the season to go off on her own journey and try to help her home that the Darkling just did so much irreparable damage to. They really expedited her character growth instead of making us wait season after season after season like they did in the books before she actually becomes someone you root for over the course of the season. You know, she's only just getting started too, and I would love to see her going out and trying to help people. Maybe she could unpack some of the more traumatic things she experienced at the Darkling's palace. I also really want to see more of David and Xenia. I already said it in a previous video, but Luke Pasqualino was criminally underused in this season. We need more David. I know the book only gave us crumbs as far as his character goes, and to be honest, it was basically like that for the entire Shadow and Bone trilogy. Was not a fan of that. Let David and Xenia talk to each other. Let me see David's workshop. I can understand that I have to make peace with the fact that you made the creative choice that you didn't want to give him glasses. That's fine. We can move past that. But let me see him tinkering away in his workshop. This is important for my health. Finally, the other thing I need to see in season 2, because what's the discussion about Shadow and Bone without a little bit of controversy? Nikolai, where is he? Bring him in. I want to see Nikolai. I'm so curious about who they're going to have play him. I don't want to fan cast him because that's just asking for me to get my own feelings hurt if I become too attached to a particular fan cast. The creative team have already done incredible work casting everyone we saw in season 1, so I see no reason to be demanding about who they cast for him. One thing that I thought about, though, that would be an interesting idea since they've already changed Alina and Mal to be mixed, I had this thought of, what if they were to cast a white-passing BIPOC to play Nikolai? Because if you've read the books, you know that there's this whole thing with Nikolai where the king is perpetually suspicious about whether or not he's really Nikolai's father. If you get into the history of the entertainment industry or just life in general, you can find these instances of BIPOC who are able to pass as white, and they will maintain that facade so that they can have access to better opportunities and to also shield themselves from the racism that they would be subjected to if anyone were to find out that they aren't really white. This applies to people like Merle Oberon, who was Indian but also was insistent on keeping that secret. She passed herself off as white. She even had her own mother pretend to be her servant to maintain that facade for fear of what that revelation would do to her career in Hollywood, if I'm not mistaken. Even today, white-passing BIPOC are given more opportunities in and out of the industry. Keanu Reeves is Asian, but people are always getting dragged on Twitter if they dare to call him white, because if anyone from Asian Twitter spots that tweet, then they will immediately clap back and go, no, 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 he's Asian. Keanu himself has never denied his Asian heritage, nor is he ashamed of it, but as far as how Hollywood treats him, these higher-ups, they do have this tendency to look at him and overlook his Asian heritage and just cast him instead for white roles. And if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have seen him as much as we have over the course of his career. So I think that it's an interesting idea if they were to decide to make Nikolai a white passing BIPOC, because you could play around with the idea of someone wanting to embrace who they really are, but also having to hide it, because if they don't, then they're going to be denied this really important thing that they want. Within the context of this world, Nikolai wants to be king so that he can help his people. And they make that very clear about him as a character. So I just think it would be a very timely story, given how there are a lot of people who have become more aware of how much racism is wrapped up in certain monarchies. I'm not naming any names. I'm not being silent, nor am I being silenced. I'm just trying to not completely derail the topic of this video. I do want to make it clear, though, that the writers are not obligated to do that idea that I've just mentioned about Nikolai. I'm just thinking out loud. I have no significant attachment to that idea. It was just something that popped into my head recently while I was thinking about the material and all the potential ways that it could be adapted for live action. I don't want anyone thinking, oh, she's gonna be upset if they cast a white guy for Nikolai. No, I trust the writers and I trust the ability of them to write compelling stories and to cast well. I think they've more than proven that with every prominent character that we saw in this entire first season. This video is just here to be a public discussion, and an open one at that, of what could potentially be in a second season or what it might be fun to see, and that's all there is to it. I should remind everyone, since I've been having a lot of new people pass through my channel because of my coverage of Shadow and Bone, that all of the videos that I am making to do with the show are made with the intention of wanting to help promote the show so that even more people tune in and give it the support that it needs to have however long a run the creative team behind it want to have. Whatever preferences you have for personal favorite characters or romantic pairings, I am in no way making these videos to insist that everyone needs to have my same preferences in those categories. When it comes to Shadow and Bone, my main goal is just to get the show high ratings, a successful run, and maybe a bigger budget and episode count for season 2. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do plan on making more videos about the show eventually, but there's probably going to be a delay, especially because when I was writing these spoiler videos, I found out that they are going to be finally releasing the first trailer for Steven Spielberg's West Side Story on Sunday, and I have been waiting for so long to see that. I made a video last year about West Side Story, and Rachel Zegler watched it, and she was so kind and supportive to me, and that just really made me feel uplifted and energized as a creative person to keep pushing forward. And now I find myself getting closer and closer to hitting 10K subscribers, which feels unreal, honestly. The point is that I can definitely see myself circling back around to make more videos about the show eventually. I just don't know when yet. And when I say videos, I mean scripted videos. I'm not saying that there won't be other videos about the show coming up soon, but not really the scripted ones. And I'm just going to leave that open-ended and mysterious and ambiguous. So, see you whenever I see you. Bye.